Next, we have Pam Pearce. Pam is a prevention and recovery advocate with 29 years of personal recovery, is a certified recovery mentor focused on upstreet prevention, as the executive director of Community Living Above, CLA, a nonprofit coalition. She leads efforts to prevent substance use among youth through education, resources, and community collaboration. In 2022, CLA was awarded the CDC Drug-Free Communities Grant, strengthening local partnership to reduce youth substance use by engaging multiple community sectors and employing environmental strategies to address local substance use challenges. Recognizing the need for a dedicated recovery school, Pam co-founded Oregon's first recovery high school, Harmony Academy, in 2019 to address the gaps in local recovery resources. Her passion for prevention, awareness, and education involves her in several board and local, state, and national groups supporting prevention and recovery. She has been a contributor and resource for prevention and recovery organizations and associations, and a prevention leader through blogs and speaking engagements. She has been honored at all levels for her personal and professional work. Pam firmly believes that that if prevention education worked as intended, many social issues we face today could be significantly reduced. And I'm going to hand it over to my friend Pam.
Thank you. Thank you. So my name is Pam Pearce, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. And in July, I celebrated 29 years. And it's interesting because now I've spent most of my life as a sober person. And when I started drinking and using when I was 14 years old, under the impression that all kids do it. And I stopped when I was 26 years old, not because I wanted to, but because I tried every way known to man to control it, be like everyone else, and learned the hard way in a crisis that I couldn't control it, that what I had was the same thing my father had. And I always say that substance use disorders come in different shapes and sizes, very similar to cancer. And just because we don't drink and use every day doesn't mean that, hey, I don't have a problem. Because to be honest, I never drank by myself. I never used by myself. I never got up in the morning and had to have a drink or a drug to feel better. And I preface that, I always say yet, because for all intents and purposes, I got sober young. I ended up in the legal system, and that was the first time in my life that I had any sort of education. And I grew up in Lake Oswego. When I graduated, I won biggest partier and best dressed. Those honors almost killed me. I went to 3 different colleges trying to outrun what was happening to me. And the whole time looked like this. And my father was a professor at Johns Hopkins. And he had the problem too, but if you're that smart and you have all these resources, you couldn't possibly have a substance use disorder. Well, again, today I'm 29 years sober and my dad is deceased and he died young. And so I have spent my entire sobriety trying to figure it out, trying to educate myself, trying to, basically so that my children would know a different way. Because what I've learned, genetics is huge. It's huge. And so if you understand that, and because this is a hard conversation to have in our families, in our communities, in our schools, nobody likes to talk about it. And the sad reality is we glamorize it until it doesn't work for someone, and then we shun them. And so for something that is so powerful, substance use disorders are so powerful, but I think one of the things that's more powerful than a substance use disorder is denial. And because I got sober young, I thought to myself, well, I know that we're supposed to be anonymous, but I don't think I feel ashamed. And so one of the ways I protected myself was I would just blurt it out. I'm in recovery. And, big eyes, everyone always is like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do with her? But in a weird way, it has blessed me beyond measure. And I'll share with anybody. Anytime I have an opportunity to share that this is what it looks like, I take advantage of it. And again, I do what I do so that my children can know a different way, because I come from a long line of genetics of having substance use disorders, as does my husband. I use my husband as an example because I, at 14 years old, jumped in the boat with my dad. Not that he promoted it, but he thought, he was under the impression that all kids do it, it's a rite of passage, and that I'll grow out of it, which, as most of us in recovery understand, that we don't. But my husband was raised also in a home where the disease lived, and his father, his strain, he drank 24 hours a day. So to my husband, it was a very ugly daily grind. And he chose not to participate in using substances because he was terrified. And he's normal, and I'm in recovery. And so with my own children, I always say, it's all about delaying use. If we could teach young people just to delay use, that substances are not the enemy, that not having the information is. That if young people could understand what this is, what this animal is, because it's a massive animal, and it takes hostages, and it doesn't stop until death. And so if young people understood that we could have these conversations to learn whether or not it's in our family, because that's 50% of this, and then to learn, okay, it's in my family, what's the other stuff I need to understand? And that's like coping skills. How do I learn to delay use in a society that reinforces that all kids do it, when that's also not true, that's false. Most children don't, but they're not lifted up in being able to say, I don't, and here's why. So with that, about 10 years ago, a woman whose child was suffering with a substance use disorder in Westland, he attended Westland High School, when she realized that she needed help with her child, she started to ask those questions. No one had answers, no one would talk about it, and again, people started to kind of fade away from her and her child. And she's like, I don't understand this. Like, I think a lot of people have this. Why can't we talk about it? So she brought the organization, Community Living Above, which I lead, to life. And she created a platform that young people could speak and, present and learn about this in an environment where power in numbers. Young people are drawn to wanting to be part of their crowd. And she, in 2017, approached me and said, hey, my son is graduating from high school, and I'd like to have this work continue. And I've gone to the community and asked, who can do this? Anyone have any suggestions? And she said, your name was unanimous. Who are you? And I knew at that point, it's like, okay, I'm in. And so me just sharing it with people who would listen to me became a platform to get loud. And when she passed it off to me, there were roughly 30 students involved, and today we have over 150 annually. And I have to tell you, as a person who drank and used in high school, I can't even say it without crying, for these young people to show up like they do in numbers, and to be able to say, and it's interesting to listen to them, and they'll answer some questions today, but to be able to have an awareness that, hey, I think what this lady is saying, I think there's something to it. Because they're not learning it so often, they're not learning about it in their homes. They're not really learning about it in school. They learn about substances, but they don't understand that it is preventable. And we actually are all wearing bands that prevention is the cure. I am telling you, prevention is the cure. And there will never be enough money to treat our way out of it. Substance use disorders are massive animals. And so we have to stop the customers. And these young people, again, there are 150 of them. You can see at the top of the picture, that was last year. These young people are true heroes, and they are incredibly brave, because they're going against the grain of the cool kids, on and on that post pictures. They show up, They speak, again, publicly like this. They've been interviewed by radio. Some of the kids on the panel were part of the Lund report that looked at prevention, and they were asked hard questions, and they answered them honestly. And the work that the Lund report was able to bring out was incredible. And again, it takes bravery to speak about something that, again, society has kept under lock and key. So with that said, I'm going to have them introduce themselves and share how old they are, and then we'll get into the questions.
Hey guys, my name is Mac. I'm 21 and I go to school here. I'm a senior at the University of Oregon, but I graduated from Westland High School.
My name is Clara Alexander, and I'm 16. And
Hi, my name is Jonathan Beldman. I'm 16 and I'm go to Westland too.
Hi, my name is Claire Pete. I'm 17 and I'm president of TAB at Westland High School.
Thank you. So the first question, what made you join the club and what keeps you and kept you coming back? Go ahead.
Yeah, so to be 100% honest, and I tell the story every time Pam asks it, what really made me come to the club to begin with was the promise of free food. She said, we're gonna have pizza, show up on this day during lunch, and so I was like, hey, I'm gonna do some crazy things for some free pizza. So I sat down, excuse me, I sat down with my friends at this table. We socialized for a little bit, having our pizza, and she told her story. And I think that was really all it was the first day of just Pam told her story, just like kind of like she did just now. And I heard that and fell in love with it a little bit, with Pam, of course, but with her story and with the things that she was saying. I'll maybe talk about this later, and I'll keep it short so these guys, but like to paint a timeline for you, you just said it started in 2017. I graduated middle school and started freshman year of high school in 2017. You started around 14 years old. That was, you start high school. I was 14 years old when I met Pam. And that was my first interaction, was sitting down and as a 14-year-old, not expecting anything and having to go to fourth period in the next half hour, almost coming to tears from this woman that I had just met. So that's why I kept coming back, among a lot of other reasons. That's why I kept coming back.
my reason isn't as inspiring, but I first went because there was this like promotional video during this like live broadcast during live class, and when I went, the way that Pam Pearce told her story kind of reminded me of my mom in a way, because she's in sobriety too. Like, she started really young, but just like that connection, I felt kind of seen, because I don't have many friends whose parents are sober or had to deal with such, or who had parents who had to deal with such hard alcoholism. So I was just like inspired to see that an adult was actually talking about it. And also the sensitive community kept me like continuing to show up, and why I'm here now, because of how good the community is, I guess.
I initially started going to TAB when some of my friends who were seniors at the time in choir invited me. So I was like, why not? I'll go explore the new club. And like was mentioned earlier, Pam was sharing her story, and I was speechless, and it was emotional to hear how she was so open to telling all of us her story and how she was willing to help us as youth. And I continue to keep going because I think Pam is a huge inspiration, especially to our club and all of us as youth. And seeing how willing she was and how willing she is now to help us and try to make our lives better as kids is so inspiring. And I think if she's willing to speak up about these issues and help us, why can't we do the same thing? And I think being able to speak about issues and take our little piece of being able to help other people around us is incredible.
when I first heard of TAB, I kept meaning to go to the TAB lunches that we have every month at my school. And I kept meaning and meaning to go, but then I'd forget or I'd miss it. But one time I did actually show up, and like the other people here, Pam shared her story, and it was very moving and also I just felt very connected to it. Not because of my own personal experience. I'm very fortunate enough that both of my parents have never struggled with that, but I just feel very passionately about it because of my friends who I've seen go through similar situations. And so her speech was just so powerful, and seeing all the kids there who agreed with me and who had similar values as me was really powerful. And so immediately after that first meeting, I came up to Pam, or the president at the time, the student president, and was like, I need to be more involved. I want to be a part of this, because I didn't realize that many kids at our school felt the same way as I did about drugs and alcohol.
I promise this is not a Pam show.
No, but you're great.
Thank you. So one of the things that Clara brought up that is really important, in Oregon, I think it's 1 out of 5 people have this in their home. And a lot of times when they get to high school, they have it in their home. But they hear screaming, fear, anger, families torn apart. And so I love to be able to stand in front of them and say, I'm not scared. I know with 100% certainty that hope and healing are possible. And I'm here to help you help yourself. And so and to me, that's part of prevention. It's understanding what this is and learning, even when we're scared, to be able to talk about it. Because again, when we can say it out loud, a lot of times the healing will begin. But it's one of the things that I admire most. Last year, our leadership team, there were like 8 or so. I think 5 people in that leadership team had a parent in recovery. And these are young people that have been going to school with each other, a lot of them since kindergarten. And to be able to go, whoa, I didn't know that your parent, and because there's a lot of us that are in recovery, there are a lot of young people whose parents are suffering. And in the Teen Advisory Board, which is what this club is called, we talk about that. We talk about how do we begin these conversations? And sometimes we're going to cry when we do, and sometimes it's very scary to say to a friend or a family member, this is what's happening and I'm concerned. So thank you, Claire, for sharing that. So with substance use disorders and understanding primary prevention, it impacts both the personal development and people's perspectives. And so, question for you guys, how has being part of the club influenced your views on mental health and substance use prevention?
I think that's kind of a two-part question for me, or a two-part answer rather. The idea of like the substance abuse prevention or substance prevention, and then mental health. Those were two very hand-in-hand but distinct themes from the club. So yes, we heard stories and we talked to each other about it, and we heard ways to educate ourselves on substance abuse and prevention and all of that. But so much of it was deviant from that. It was what so much of us needed as well at the time, which was a focus and emphasis on mental health. I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what someone said earlier. The people before us mentioned that they realized that they wanted to live. And I think that for at least for me, that was one of the big things I took away from it, was a desire to be here and a desire to be healthy, even if I wasn't, as you say, staring down the jaws of the beast. So that was a big one for me, was a desire to be here. But one of the also similarly a big takeaway from it, I suppose, was the culture of education. And it's not me being educated, and it's not, hey, you should, figure this out for yourself. It's genuinely a culture of education, which is what we're fostering. A culture of education, acknowledgement of stigmatization, and finding ways to break those barriers down. I have a lot to talk about on that, but I'm gonna pass it on.
Can I look at the question? Being a part of this club has influenced my views on mental health and substance use prevention by, okay, I'm good. Thank you, sorry. I think it's made it, okay, I deal with some mental health problems, and I have friends who cope with their mental health problems by using substances, and I feel like joining this club has helped me by seeing that obviously I understand why people would use that to like cope, because even though it's not good, the way it like registers in your brain, it feels good, obviously, but like, sorry. But joining this club has helped me see that that's like, sorry, I'm losing my thoughts. Sorry, like, can you come back to me?
I think the way I view it, I currently am a trainer in QPR, which if people don't know is a suicide prevention training. And I think, and we use a lot of the strategies regarding mental health is a lot about conversation and asking questions. And I think especially with the loop with suicide and substance use, a lot of the time people just need the support and people to talk to. And if you're someone who's able to talk to someone about it, a lot of the time they're more comfortable and you can start to open those doors of helping them. But without leaving them closed and having those different resources, it's extremely hard to talk about different things. I know I've gone through some major ups and downs mentally, and it helps having someone to talk to. And I think that's also a big part of our club is it's just a sense of community where you're able to share your ideas, and you're able to talk about things where other people are able to relate to you, and you can help each other through the hard times.
Being in this club has definitely taught me a lot. When I first joined, or when I started, I thought that I knew a lot about mental health and substances and drugs and alcohol, and they're so bad, and it's like the enemy, and like what you learn in health class is like they're out to get you, basically, and only those bad people do them, like, and it's like you and them. What am I saying? But I came to realize that I had stereotyped people in the past, even though I don't want to admit it. Stereotyping people who use, people who don't use, all the different categories of people. And I've come to learn that we really are just all people, and we have struggles. And I mean, this is pretty simple, but we all cope in different ways, and a lot of people need the information and the resources to help them. And if they don't get that and they go to drugs or alcohol or something, that's not necessarily like their fault, I guess. That isn't like, I don't know how to phrase it, but they're not bad people inherently. And I think it's really easy to like stereotype people who are really in the trenches, so to say. I don't know.
Thank you. So the next question is kind of piggybacking off of what Claire just shared. So one of the questions that the Lund report asked the students, like, what are you learning in school? And it's not to say that the schools are doing it right or wrong. It's just, it's trying to understand young people's realities so that we can start supporting them in their reality right now. And so the next question is, so the stuff you've learned, and you may think, I don't even remember, because maybe it's not a lot, but the stuff that you learned in school and the club, like how is it different in the club? And does it support what you're learning? And does it give you opportunities to experience it. But again, learning and trying to think back, what did I learn in school? And does the club support that, or is it totally different?
We have health classes in high school. And so we talk about substances. Occasionally, we'll talk about alcohol use and this type of thing. But it really is just that. We'll talk, like, and I don't know if it's changed or not since I've been, but like, it really is just that. We'll talk about this is the, it's very objective. So in these classes, from my perspective, it's, here it is, these are bad, don't do them. Which, that works for some people, I suppose, sure. Here, it's been less about that. Like I was saying, it's about stigmatization, and it's about all of these things. It's about opening these doors to be able to talk about it and to be able to discuss issues, challenges, hurdles, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But it's less about this is this substance, this is the effect, this is what it does, this is why you shouldn't do it. Here's the before and after picture of someone. It's less about that and more of this is my relationship with this. This is my experience. Sure, this drug might not inherently, objectively be good or bad or ugly or whatever, but my relationship with it was. Let me talk about that. Let me open the doors. Ask me questions. As someone who was 14 when I joined the club, excuse me, ask me questions. Open a conversation with me, and let's talk about it, like we would never do in health class. That's what I gained so much from that personally.
I agree with what was just said, and I think that TAB, I think it doesn't really agree with what we're taught in like health class, but like in the best way possible. Like in health class, and I remember last year, for when we talked about like substance abuse for like 2.5 days, all they did was show this website of pictures of like what people looked like before and after substance abuse. And I feel like that doesn't really help at all. Like, it just scares people who haven't started or won't start. And then it also just makes people who do struggle just feel bad. And I think TAB is different because instead of it being linear, it's more like what you said. Like, it's, I'm sorry, I'm losing my thoughts. It's like
Nerves.
not, it's more welcoming to every single idea, I guess. It's like more, for lack of a better word, inclusive, I guess. Yeah. Like, it's not shameful. And I think when you learn, you don't learn to be scared. You learn to be aware, like what the bracelets say, I guess. So, yeah.
I know in health class, I remember taking summer health, and we had a whole lesson planned out on just writing a whole slideshow on about 20 different substances and what they do and why you shouldn't do them and the effects that they cause. And all they do is they tell you you shouldn't do it, but there's nothing about necessarily the impacts it might have or why you might have started on it. And I think something that's really big that like has stuck with me still with TAB is how Pam told us that it's not necessarily about that doing drugs is bad or you shouldn't do drugs, but the thing is that we talk about a lot is that when you delay use, you prevent abuse. So the thing that we talk about is more about how can I help you delay your use versus how can I tell you not to do drugs. And I know also a lot of it is about safe place. They don't necessarily tell you in health class that you have a safe place when you do it. They tell you you just shouldn't do it. But instead, I know Pam has told us before she wants us, if we ever decided to try drugs, that she wants us to be in a safe place where we could get help. So I think a big thing about it is also just being able, we get more resources with TAB on how we could delay our use or what we could do to stay safer versus in health class, it's very structured just to tell us we shouldn't do drugs. And that's a bad thing to do.
That was great. I agree with like all of that. something you said, I really agree with. Like, in health class, they teach us about the drugs and why not to do them, but oftentimes I've found that they don't teach why someone might go to that drug, or the backgrounds of the stories of people who have gone down that path. And it's great to focus on like recovery and everything you can do after, but I would really appreciate it if we learned more about prevention and other ways we can cope with all that we're feeling and dealing with. What else was I going to say? Also, I feel like in health class we learn a lot about drugs and what they do, but there's like this air that, like, I don't know how to explain it. The students like realize like, oh yeah, okay, that's bad, we learned that in health class, but it doesn't really apply to me because they're talking about tobacco and cigarettes and like meth or something, and I would never do that. Like, I'm just vaping, or I'm only doing weed. Like, it's really chill. It's really not that heavy, I guess. But I think what's really important to teach about, that I think should be more in the curriculum, is how those gateway drugs, is that what they're called? How those smaller or less bad drugs can lead to more prominent substance use disorders, and how those drugs are still like damaging, even though they aren't as bad.
Yep, that actually brings up a good point. I got sober young, like I shared, and I never made it to like what people would consider heavy drugs, and so I'm like, God, I was really allergic. I mean, fast and furious, and I went to the end quickly. And so that is something I do like to share. It's like, you don't have to drink or use every single day, and you don't have to hit, the heavier drugs. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. And a lot of us never make it past drinking or, smoking pot, whatever. So next question. What challenges do you face trying to promote a substance use prevention club with your peers?
I'm gonna throw you guys under the bus. I want to hear you guys' first, because I've been 4 years out of this, so I want to hear what your guys' are right now, if that's okay.
Okay, I'm glad I'm going first. A big challenge when I'm trying to promote this is that I'm kind of scared of my friends that do use drugs, honestly, because, sorry, that was like a bad way to put it. My friends who do smoke and struggle with that, because I'm worried that, okay, I'm sorry, I'm bringing stereotypes into this. I'm worried that they stereotype me as like this weird, I hate drugs kind of person, when I just want them to know that they have a safe space. So I feel like a struggle for me is fear of being stereotyped for doing what I think is right.
I think, especially in a high school setting, it's really hard because you're afraid of the judgment of what people will say. In high school, that's what we're all focused on, is following the social norms of everything. And especially when you're trying to promote something that's different, people are going to judge you and you're afraid of what they're going to say. But especially when you're trying to make a change, having the perseverance to just continue on is one of the biggest things. I know I've gone through so many hard things in high school, and it's all about just trying to share your voice. And especially in our school district, it's a little bit difficult to get through the administration, so that's always a big thing. But just continuing to speak and making it prominent to others, and as you continue to share your voice, more and more people will begin to listen, and they'll start to realize this is something that I need to listen and understand on.
For me, the hardest thing about promoting the TAB club at our school is I've found that a lot of times that people or my peers or other students who may use, they feel like they aren't allowed into the club, or they feel it's not for them. And they think like, oh, they wouldn't like me in there. Like, we just did like a club fair at our school where we like promoted all the different clubs at our school, and we were there with TAB, and I like gave a bracelet to someone I know, and I was like, do you want to sign up to like join TAB? And they were like, oh, I don't think they would like me in there. And I was like, well, no, If I've found that a lot of people who do use in any sort of capacity have this idea that tab is like anti-drug, and if you go there and they find out that you're using, that they're just gonna like arrest you or put you in juvie, and like everybody hates you, and like it's the worst. But really, tab is about prevention, but also about helping those kids who are using and who need that help, and we want to support those children, support those kids, teenagers, they're almost adults, but we still want to support them, and I think that's the hardest part for me personally, is just getting people to understand that even if you do use, you're welcome here, you know?
100%. That was one of the first stereotypes when I took this organization over. Parents would share with me, well, you know, there are kids in your club that use, and I'm like, great, this is the safest place in the world for them to be. Because again, I'm not scared of it, but I'm also one of them. And I understand it. And you know, this is about planting seeds so that they can make informed decisions. And you know, again, one of the, I believe, is part of them getting the information to be able to support themselves and their peers, is being able to have these conversations, being able to say to another friend, I know where you can go for help. In 2017, when we were bringing Harmony to life, the Teen Advisory Board, we were down to 3 properties. And I sent a text out, because I'm thinking, God, I would love some young people's, you know, perspective and their opinion on these buildings. And so I just sent out a text. 50 children, or kids, students, showed up, 50, from the Teen Advisory Board, and they walked 3 properties, and they chose the building. They were also instrumental in choosing the name. We'd go round and round about names, and I'd go in at one of the monthly lunches, and I'm like, okay, here's the name. And they'd all sit quietly looking at me, not moving. I'm like, okay, that's not the name. The name came on November 11th, which is a totally separate story. And a couple days later, we had a Teen Advisory Board lunch, and I walked in and I said, Harmony. Every single student stood up and cheered, and I was like, there it is, that's the name. And one of the students brought me a cup, which I've given to Sharon, that says Harmony on it. And again, these are hard topics. And for these young people, they're listening. And they keep coming, and they ask questions, and they show up. And again, it's not easy. Adults don't do it. And so for young people to say, okay, we're gonna try a different way, is incredibly inspiring. And often, again, a lot of them have it inside their home, and they're fighting upstream constantly. But if they know, and I may have said it earlier, but I always say prevention is the cure. Substances are not the enemy, but not having the information is. And so again, if we can talk about it, encourage parents to talk about it, encourage pediatricians to talk about it. A lot of these young people can go on to drink and use if they choose. My children today are 25, 23, and 18. And I use them as an example because they've always had a mother in recovery. They, thank God, never saw me in active use. But I was asked recently if my kids were embarrassed about all the attention that I bring on our family. And I never stopped to ever ask them, does it embarrass you that I'm in recovery? And they're like, no, we're proud of you, Mom. And so again, it's a blessing. Do we have time to show the video? So this is October is Substance Use Prevention Month, and I wanted to share a quick video that some of the students.
October is Youth Substance Use Prevention Month. This month, we strive to steer away from the social pressures that we may not know how to deal with on our own.
Millions of Americans suffer from substance abuse, which include underage drinking, alcohol dependency, non-medical use of prescription drugs, abuse of over-the-counter medications, and illicit drug use.
Prevention strategies that target the root of the problem are essential to curb drug use and help people lead healthier lives. Ways to prevent include early intervention and community-based efforts such as TAB, which involves parents, educators, and youth. Raising awareness of substance misuse in teenagers is important to talk about because as youth, we are vulnerable to this threat.
We need to change the way we see and speak of substance use, as it doesn't make you a bad person. We strive to have a community that is open and free of judgment. We recognize the power of prevention and are trying to reduce drug misuse and its effects on adolescents.
We need to build a better future for those who follow so we can prevent substance misuse. To learn more, turn to Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administrations to learn more about Youth Substance Use Prevention Month.
Any questions?
Hi there, Claire from Multnomah County. I just want to say thank you for speaking, and thank you to all of the youth who have been speaking on panels. It's hard to be up there, so thanks for the courage. And for those of you at TAB, my question is, how do you keep recruitment going in your club from year to year when you have folks cycle off after 4? We have clubs in Portland, and as a coordinator of a whole county trying to support individual schools, it's really hard when one kid will be really passionate and then leave after they graduate.
These guys are rock stars.
I'm gonna be so real. I think part of it's the food. I think people really like free food, and especially when it's pizza, people always like that. But on like a more like legit reason, I think as we go along, they're underclassmen. They start to come to the club multiple times, and then as people gain friends in the other classes, they start to join them as well. And it's just like the cycle that they just keep kind of joining each other, and it keeps spreading throughout. And also the club fair is also at our school a really good thing that kind of continues. And we have things that we pass out, we have posters and stuff, and it just kind of keeps getting people interested to keep coming each year.
Yeah, all of that. Also, I think a lot of it is everybody comes for the free pizza at the start, but then they stay for Pam and her emotional stories, which are they're really moving. Even if you don't realize it, they really are. And they realize like how big of a community it is, and they're like, wow, I know a couple people who are in this, and it seems like a fun thing to do. And it's only once a month, so it's not that big of a commitment, to be honest. We also do a lot of promotion like on social media, and our school has a live broadcast, and so we put a lot of, we promote it a lot to our school, and so that keeps kids and underclassmen coming a lot, as well as the pizza.
Treats help. Treat always helps.
And candy.
Yeah.
Okay, one more question.
Thank you so much. Man, y'all are amazing. I mean, crushing it. All of you youth up there, I would be like crying and very sweaty, and you're crushing it. So way to go. And that's me like now, like this age, not even at your age. So I want to start with just a little something, which is that I get the privilege here in Lane County of receiving barriers from our community members, and that includes community partners, that includes youth. And I heard from a licensed therapist at an elementary school, she's contracted to work there to provide services, that she has six-year-olds coming and telling her, mommy and daddy or so-and-so is doing this thing. And so she reached out to me wondering, what can we do in our schools to provide some sort of support when I am seeing numerous children who are coming and saying they're having a hard time because something around substance use in their homes. And so I bring that up now because you all being the leaders that you are with this very, very cool model, I'm curious about any efforts for expansion besides just Westland High School and in your area inland, and also knowing that we have some very important decision makers in here, just putting it in their ear that really prevention starts even younger.
We're fighting that fight. Because the truth is, if we could start talking about it really early, it takes away so much of the stigma. Again, using my own children, They don't know it good or bad, it's just a thing. And one of the things that was on my, on the first slide, Know Your Neuro, K-N-O-W, Your Neuro. And that is a website that is free. And I met Dr. Crystal Collier when I was working on Harmony. And that website is for parents, staff, school staff, and youth. And it's every high-risk topic, behavior, question, resource. It's almost like a platform, again, that parents can go on, that young people can go on, and school staff can go on. And she kind of takes you into the world of prevention, like how do you start? I gave Louise some books that she wrote for children, that if you read every single night to your kid, they learn about the superhero brain, and they learn about how important it is to take care of their brain. So, but I could go on, and yep. All right, thank you.